Alright, so why don't we go through and debunk 5 common car myths that people still probably believe. Now you'll have to excuse all of the. I'm sick yet again. Can you believe it? I just got over something. I felt great for like a week, and now bam, right back into it. Ugh, what do you do? Anyways, all right. So let's go over a few things that they're common myths about cars and the way things work and engines and whatnot. They're myths. They're not true. It's totally false. Yet there's probably still quite a few people who believe in them. Let's start with number one. The common car myth number one: collector extension length. A lot of people say to paint a line, right, on your collector extension, and wherever the line burns to, that's where you cut it for optimal power. That's a myth, and it actually doesn't work at all. 9 times out of 10, you're going to end up cutting it way too short when you do it that way. Because it's not the heat that's, making the power. It's the sonic tuning and all that, wave reflected waves and whatnot going throughout your entire exhaust system. I actually made a whole video on it, so if you want to check it out, it's right there for a full in detail, video on it. But just know that's one common car myth that I still get a lot in the comment section. It's just not true. Alright, common car myth number two: octane rating, right? These guys right here. People believe if you put higher octane fuel in your car, you put race gas in it, then the car will make more power. Well, unfortunately, that's not the way octane rating works. Talking gasoline now, we're not going to get to E85 and oxygenated fuels because those do make more power because they're introducing oxygen into the system. Just regular, gasoline, octane 87, 110, 116 racing gas, that doesn't make any more power. All it does is it resists detonation, meaning it won't spontaneously combust due to hot spots in your chamber quite as easily. Now, a lot of people believe that the fact that race gas, higher octane, burns slower and less octane burns faster, that there's different timing curves with different fuels and all that. They burn the same, okay? The racing gas and it all has the same flame front. You don't have to change your timing for it. You don't have to change your jets for it. It's just a resistance to detonation is the only change. Now, it's preferable to have race gas when you're racing because you're running the motor hard. A lot more potential for detonation when you're really getting on it. If you have a high output motor, high horsepower, high compression motor, and you're just right at the edge between needing a higher octane fuel and being able to run pump gas, like 11, 5 to 1 or something like that, right? Right on the feather's edge, you might on the street back off your timing and then during the track advance your timing a bit with the added race fuel. Now, in that sense, you would technically be making more power, but it's because your engine wasn't at optimal timing to begin with. If your engine is already at optimal timing on regular pump gas, it's not going to make any more power on race gas. Now, we're talking naturally aspirated engines at this point. If you're running boost or a supercharger or, nitrous or something like that, and you crank that stuff up at the track with race gas, well, yeah, you'll make more power then because you're able to crank up your boost to that because it's less resistant to detonation. That, totally, yeah, you're going to make more power. But just apples to apples, naturally aspirated, no, not so much. All right, common myth number three: equal length headers will make the most power. Not necessarily. See, if you had a firing order that never had two cylinders fire next to each other? Possibly. But most all of the engines we ever deal with, you're bound to have two go off right next to each other. And those two will travel down the pipes, clog themselves into this collector, and because how the collector works, the collector is supposed to help each pulse out of the tube and subsequently pull the next intake charge on overlap. You're not going to have that because they're traveling down the same rate. One is not helping the other out at all because they get there at the same time. Ultimately, you would want one of these pipes longer so one reaches the collector first and helps the other. Common myth number 4. Port and polish your cylinder heads. Well, you're half right. You want to port them, yeah, but you don't necessarily want to polish them. Now, we're going to assume you're running a carburetor because, well, I mean, you should be. I mean, if you're not, what's wrong with you? Anyways, now with fuel going through the intake, a smooth, mirror-like finish is going to give that fuel a place to puddle up against, right? It'll be easier to fall out of atomization with a smooth finish. The finish is a little textured, it has a little, grit to it. Then the fuel won't be able to nicely pull up against it. It'll get, broken apart and help atomize it. The second reason is because it'll actually give that micro kind of, roughness will actually help lubricate the air going through. Okay, let me draw you a diagram of this, right? All right, so this is an exaggerated, this is the texture of your port. So what happens is in these little grooves and valleys, air will get trapped in there, right? It'll get just like a crosshatch on a cylinder and the oil gets trapped. Well, the air will get trapped right like this. Air to air is less has less viscosity than air to metal will, right? So that trapped air will actually lubricate the other air floating on top of it, just like a golf ball. Really, you want a little texture to it, not just mere finish. So a finish just kind of like this, perfectly fine. All right, myth number 5, the one that hangs around probably the tightest, right, out of all these. This back pressure thing. People swear up and down that you want back pressure. Well, back pressure is a resistance of flow. Back pressure is a resistance of being able to get burnt combustion out of the chamber. That doesn't make, well, sense or power. Okay? This is a 4-stroke cycle engine, right? This ain't a 2-stroke. 2-strokes are their own little world. And this is not turboed. This is just goes out. Actually, that kills power open headers, but I'm not even going to get into that. But you don't want anything resisting the flow of the exhaust. I think about it. If back pressure was really, the bee's knees, we wouldn't need fancy cylinder heads. We could make some serious back pressure without these. But you don't want just open manifolds just right out into the open either. Because that, in of itself, is back pressure compared to what we have here. This is actually a vacuum. As the pulses travel down the tube, they are creating negative pressure behind them because the valve is closed, this is traveling down, that's expanding, this open void here, negative pressure, which helps pull everything out as well. That is actually scavenging, a negative pressure vacuum system here. That's the job of the manifolds. So really, having open manifolds is back pressure compared to this negative pressure here, vacuum. Okay, well that's been 5, common car myths that people might still believe. I'm gonna go lay down, and I'll catch you next time.